According to a new documentary, the original cause of death for George Floyd, the medical examiner's report, did not mention asphyxiation. And the argument now is that the FBI altered this in order to secure a conviction. Derek Chauvin speaks out from prison in new George Floyd documentary, The Fall of Minneapolis. The whole trial was a sham. Now, why would they do this? I want you all to understand something. The government does not care about justice. The government cares about function. Most people do. And I don't blame humans for being this way, but we must understand the importance of rights, even to the detriment of society. What I mean to say, there may be a circumstance where an individual may be the catalyst for massive riots. And if that person is innocent, the innocence must be upheld. George Floyd, Derek Chauvin. I have my opinions. We'll talk about them, but I'll put it this way. The FBI, the federal government, and local government's view of this case, as well as cases like Ahmaud Arbery, is it is better that innocent people suffer than we get riots. Why did the McMichaels go to prison over Ahmaud Arbery? Why did they arrest the man who filmed it and put him behind bars for the rest of his life? The man who filmed it going to prison proves the point. Let me stress this for you. Ahmaud Arbery, the left claims he was jogging. Not true. That wasn't even an argument in court. In court, the question was, we know he's the suspect in a felony, but does that give the McMichaels the right to engage in citizen's arrest? The jury decided no, and thus they were convicted. But why arrest the man who filmed it? For obvious reasons. That video footage created the possibility of national unrest. And so be it. I'd be willing to bet the way the machine worked when they saw that, and I think this is proof. Guys, these guys are going to prison for the rest of their lives. Nothing else matters, because if they are acquitted, you will have national widespread riots and instability. And the government doesn't care about you. They care about maintaining stability for themselves. And I believe the Ahmaud Arbery case proves it. Now, as for this story of Derek Chauvin, this one's interesting. I think anyone who looked at the body camera footage and went through all the details would conclude, well, Derek Chauvin should be responsible in some capacity. Going to prison, getting charged federally, everything we saw. In fact, the cop who simply held people back also got convicted. Why are they sending the tangentially related individuals like the guy who filmed or the cop who held back a crowd? Is the argument that if a crowd wants to intervene in an arrest, you must let them do it? No. It's because your suffering is politically expedient. Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis cop serving 21 years for the death of George Floyd, has described his trial as a sham in his first comments to the media. It was, unquestionably. I'll tell you why. There were riots outside. The jury was being brought in by armed guard, police with rifles. When asked for a change of venue for a fair trial, the judge said, you can't get one. Not even. They said outright, there is no jurisdiction in Minnesota where you can receive a fair trial. So we'll do it here. If that's the case, you must release the person. If the argument is no fair trial can be had, then you are innocent. Have a nice day. My view is, if this results in widespread rioting and billions of dollars in damages, so be it. So be it. That is something for us to deal with, to preserve innocence and protect the innocent. Sometimes crazy people will do crazy things. But simply because the criminals, the rioters, are scarier, does not mean we can put innocent people in prison. Now, as I said, Chauvin probably has some responsibility in death. When you take action that results in someone's death, you are typically, punished because you did something wrong. 21 years, excessive. And what's interesting, I've got a lot to show you. I think the case debunked itself. Here we can see the use of force, the escalation of force continuum. In the trial, you can see two things are highlighted: unconscious neck restraints and conscious neck restraints. In the middle, the most important thing, taser. In the trial, the prosecution's own witness argued that Derek Chauvin was justified in escalating the use of force to a taser. What did Derek Chauvin use? He used what's called a conscious neck restraint. That is, kneeling on the back of George Floyd with his knee. Look, the fact is his knee was on his neck. You can see it clearly in the camera, and sometimes on the upper back. A conscious neck restraint is defined as a restraint on the neck that does not incapacitate. An unconscious neck restraint is when you choke hold someone, blocking blood flow to the brain intentionally to incapacitate. The maneuver used by Chauvin would be classified as a conscious neck restraint. This was in the trial. They said, yes, actually, Chauvin, based on the actions of George Floyd, Chauvin could have escalated beyond this. Now, I want to be clear. This photo's arguing the inverse. They're arguing that Chauvin was using an unconscious neck restraint. That's not correct. Conscious neck restraint is kneeling on their back. That doesn't block the flow. You're holding their neck down with your knee. It doesn't block the arteries in the neck. But let's read. They say, her crowdfunded documentary. Oh, so let me make sure I get this. Journalist Liz Collin. They say her documentary gives weight to the suggestion that the FBI altered Floyd's autopsy to make it appear as though Chauvin had killed him by kneeling on his neck when it originally made no mention of any asphyxiation. It also highlights multiple Minneapolis officers who all say Chauvin was using a technique he'd been trained to use when he restrained Floyd, and accuses prosecutors of ignoring and overlooking evidence that would have exonerated him. I think so too. If he's trained to do it, it's not intentionally, it's not his fault personally. It means the system is broken. It means the system must be held accountable. But here we go. The government doesn't want to get in trouble, so they will throw Chauvin under the bus. Take a look at this from Reuters. No evidence drug overdose was main cause of death for George Floyd in 2020. No evidence? What do you mean no evidence? There is evidence. Proof? I don't know about that. I'm not a medical examiner. The cause of death was publicly released as lack of blood flow, asphyxiation due to pressure taken by the officer, actually by a homicide. And that's fine, whatever. They can say what they want. The argument is the FBI altered it. Sure, fine, whatever. I don't know. Choose who to trust. That's up to you. I'm not telling you who was right or who was wrong. But I can tell you this. If it literally says in it that he had meth and fentanyl to a large degree in his system, that certainly is evidence a drug overdose was the main cause of death. It doesn't mean the medical examiner ruled that it was or proof that it was. Evidence does not mean proof. I love going through this. I'm going to go through it again for all the skeptics. A man is murdered. A block away, there are bullet casings found on the front lawn of a home that match the gun that was used to kill this guy. Evidence. Hey, we found this. You take it, you put it in baggies, you label it evidence. Does it prove the owner of that home did it? No. Does it prove anyone in that home did it? No. It could have been in the murder through the shell casings in that lawn. But it is evidence that could be used to secure a search warrant. So when you say there's no evidence, that's incorrect. There was meth and fentanyl in a system, and they found a speedball. That is evidence. You could pursue it further. Maybe you ultimately conclude that it wasn't the cause of death. That's totally fine. But this is how they lie. Take a look at this one from the AP. I love this fact check. They say George Floyd's autopsy report is not new, does not say he died of an overdose. Fair. But it says, I love this, they bury it way down. No life-threatening injuries identified. Now, a lot of people are claiming that this means it must have been drug overdose. Well, that's fine to claim. It's up to you. I want to clarify. The death autopsy report said it was the actions of Chauvin that killed him. You can argue he had drugs in his system. You can argue the fentanyl would have killed him anyway. You can also argue that the pressure put on his back and neck and on his chest when he had a bad heart caused him to die. I think that's absolutely fair. And you don't need to have long-standing injuries. If you put pressure on someone's body so that their chest can't move. All right, let me tell you a story. They found a kid who was rolled up in a gym mat. Bullies had taken him, put him in the mat, rolled it up, and then left him. He died. Why? He couldn't expand his chest to breathe. So he was no life-threatening injuries, just not enough air to keep the body going. These kids killed him. People don't get it, man. I think those are all fair points, but you can see how the media is lying. I want to stress, I think it is the case that Chauvin was run over the coals. The fact that the cop who just held people back went to prison proves it. When it comes to Ahmaud Arbery, the fact that they're going after the DA, This is crazy. Former Brunswick DA accused of interfering in Arbery murder. No movement. They're saying, how come this person's not in prison yet? Yo, that's crazy to me. They want to put the district attorney in prison for not criminally charging the McMichaels. And look at this. This upcoming February will mark 4 years since the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the jogger shot and killed by 2 white men chasing after him. They're lying. They're lying. You can argue the McMichaels were in the wrong. You can argue they had no right to chase after him. You can argue they were not legally, they did not have the authority to engage in a citizen's arrest. But there was never a question the guy was a jogger. The prosecution admitted this. It wasn't even an admission. It's the craziest thing. In the case, they outright said Ahmaud Arbery was seen burglarizing a home. Have a nice day. That's a fact. Okay. Ahmaud Arbery burglarized a home on video. The McMichaels heard he was running down the street and pursued him. The question: they had not witnessed the burglary. Thus, according to the statute, the question was for the jury, did they have the authority to attempt a citizen's arrest? The jury said no. Therefore, they were responsible for Arbery's death. That's it. If the DA had no video evidence, knew this guy was a burglary suspect, knew that these guys were trying to stop him, what could the DA do? They want the DA in prison as well. You need to understand where this country is headed. As for Chauvin, I don't know. I can only tell you, the government will kill you to protect itself. No question. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.